The White House is pushing back against recession fears after some stock market turmoil last week. President Trump told reporters yesterday that America's economy is the best in the world, and he also touted low unemployment and new trade deals. But there are serious warning signs that the economy may face trouble in the future, in part due to his trade war with China. Chip Reid takes a closer look.
I think it would be very hard to deal if they do violence.
Sending a signal to Chinese President Xi Jinping on Sunday, President Trump warned that government retaliation against protesters in Hong Kong could threaten a potential trade deal with the U.S.
President Xi obviously has this in mind because he probably would have acted faster.
Even so, the president suggested he might not pull back on tariffs against China anytime soon.
I'm just not ready to make a deal yet.
The U.S. economy has been a bright spot for Donald Trump's presidency. He's overseen a flourishing job market with a nearly 50-year low unemployment rate and a generally strong stock market. But last week, the Dow plunged 800 points in one day, the biggest single-day drop of the year as investors forecast concerns with the global economy. The White House is now working to project calm.
I sure don't see a recession.
But even Mr. Trump conceded his trade war with China is affecting the markets.
If I wanted to make a bad deal and settle on China, the market would go up.
Last week, Mr. Trump announced a delay on some tariffs against China, as studies show the tariffs would have cost Americans an average of $270 a year. Potential impacts Mr. Trump's advisors are brushing off.
So tariffs are working. They're an important part of the strategy to bring the Chinese to the negotiating table.
So Chip Reid is joining me now from the White House. First off, Chip, these trade talks with China, how are they going?
Well, it's hard to say. They appear to be long-range trade talks. Larry Kudlow, the White House economic advisor, said that if talks that are now going on through teleconference turn out well, then at some point in the not-too-distant future, Chinese officials are expected to come to the United States to continue those talks, but there certainly are no real deadlines here. And as you just heard, the president says he's not ready to make any kind of deal. So it seems to be a long-term process. And the president appears to believe he has the upper hand because the Chinese economy is suffering more than the American economy. And a lot of people believe what he's waiting for is for the Chinese basically to cry uncle.
Yeah, that's what we've heard from the president and many of his surrogates over the weekend. But still, a number of economists have expressed concerns about a possible looming recession, maybe not in the next 6 months, but perhaps in the next year or so.
Right.
The stock market reacted, plunging like 800 points one day last week. Somewhat of a recovery has been made, but I don't believe the entire 800 has been recovered.
Right.
Nonetheless, many people have said that the key to the president winning over or keeping voters that are beyond his base that will sort of vote for him no matter what is making sure that we have a healthy economy. So how is the president spinning this news right now on the campaign trail?
Well, basically, he's doing two things. Number one, he's saying the economy is still healthy. He is saying that, as is the case, that unemployment is still low, that other than that big drop last week and some other drops along the way, the stock market has been relatively healthy, and he has said he does not believe a recession is coming. While at the same time, he's already making clear who he's going to blame if the economy does go south, and it's not going to be himself. It's going to be the media, because he believes we're beating the drum too loudly and too often about the possibility of a recession, and the Fed, which he has really been beating up on, blaming higher interest rates, not much higher, but higher interest rates for slowing down the economy that he says would take off like a rocket if it weren't for the Fed and the media's negative influence.
So Congress is going to be returning to Capitol Hill soon. Lawmakers are expected to take up gun control legislation. President Trump spoke about background checks yesterday. This is what he had to say.
Congress is looking at it very strongly, bipartisan. I put in certain parameters which you somewhat know about. I'm also very, very concerned with the Second Amendment, more so than most presidents would be. People don't realize we have very strong background checks right now. You go in to buy a gun, you have to sign up. There are a lot of background checks that have been approved over the years. So I'll have to see what it is. But Congress is meeting, bipartisan. A lot of people want to see something happen. But just remember this, big mental problem, and we do have a lot of background checks right now.
So, right after the shootings in El Paso and Dayton, we heard the president talk about background checks and talk about red flag laws. But now it seems like he's backing away a little bit, going back to the issue of mental health being sort of the primary concern to stop these shootings in the future. We've seen this before, right, Chip?
Well, you know, right after the president said background checks, we need to do more about background checks, Democrats and gun control advocates said that he's done this many times before, that after horrible shootings, he says we need to strengthen background checks. And they don't doubt his sincerity when he says that. But then the NRA talks to him and his advisors talk to him who remind him that his core supporters do not want big changes in gun laws. And then each time in the past, he has then backed off his insistence that there need to be stronger background checks. And so now you hear he's not talking about the need for stronger background checks. He's now talking about how strong those background check laws are already. So he may well be in the process of backing off his interest in strengthening background checks. Anne Marie?
All right, Chip, thank you very much.